Every night, the screams of nameless children still echo through the forests of France, their final breaths stolen by jaws that crushed skulls like eggshells while their grandmother's blood still dripped from the predator's teeth. The red cloaks they found wrapped around broken necks became evidence in murder cases so brutal that authorities transformed them into children's bedtime stories rather than face the truth about what hunted little girls through the woods. You think you know Little Red Riding Hood, but the wolf was real, the murders were documented, and the cottage in the woods was a crime scene. The fairy tale you love was written in the blood of actual children whose final moments were so horrific that entire communities turned their deaths into cautionary tales. The little girl in the red hood tried to warn you. The question is, are you brave enough to listen? Chapter 1. The Beast That Ate Children. The killing began on a summer evening in 1764 when something emerged from the forests of south-central France that would redefine the very concept of predator. La Bête would systematically hunt down and slaughter over 100 men, women, and children in ways so brutal that even medieval courts struggled to process the evidence. This wasn't a fairy tale monster. French authorities documented every attack, creating detailed records of a creature that defied natural predation. Eyewitness testimonies described a wolf-like beast the size of a calf, with reddish-brown fur, massive shoulders, and jaws powerful enough to decapitate humans with surgical precision. What made La Bête truly terrifying was its intelligence. It stalked victims for miles, studying their routines, learning their patterns, waiting for perfect isolation. It would circle prey for minutes before attacking, as if deriving pleasure from their terror. This wasn't animal behavior. This was calculated psychological warfare. The beast targeted young girls and women traveling alone, particularly those carrying baskets of food through forest paths. Multiple attacks involved girls between 8 and 16 walking isolated routes to deliver bread, cheese, or medicine to relatives. The creature understood that these girls followed predictable patterns, making them easy prey. Marie-Jeanne Vallée's encounter on August 11th, 1765, provides the clearest connection to our beloved fairy tale. The 19-year-old was carrying food to her sick grandmother when the beast emerged from the undergrowth. Her testimony reads like Little Red Riding Hood brought to horrifying life. The creature approached almost casually, showing no fear of humans. It circled her, forcing her toward trees where she grabbed a spear-like branch. When it lunged, she drove the weapon into its chest, becoming one of few people to wound the beast and survive. Her description reveals methodical hunting strategy. The beast studied her, tested her responses, learning from each encounter to improve future techniques. The killing method was surgical. Unlike normal predators targeting throat or abdomen, this creature consistently targeted the head and neck with precision. Victims were found decapitated or with crushed skulls, but minimal damage elsewhere. Medical examinations suggested the beast possessed anatomical knowledge of human vulnerabilities. French authorities documented over 210 attacks, with confirmed kills exceeding 100 victims. King Louis XV became personally involved, sending his best hunters and offering massive rewards, elevating regional crisis to national security. These records mirror Little Red Riding Hood perfectly. Young girls walking forest paths to visit relatives, a predator stalking through woods, isolated cottages where attacks occurred, deception tactics. Survivors reported the beast seemed friendly initially, approaching without aggression before revealing lethal nature. The beast's reign ended in 1767 when hunter Jean Chastel allegedly killed it. An entire generation had grown up in terror, afraid to walk alone, afraid of forests that once provided livelihood. Communities needed to process incomprehensible horror, transforming it into something understandable. The fairy tale became their coping mechanism and survival guide. Parents taught daughters brutal lessons disguised as entertainment. Never trust strangers approaching casually. Never walk alone through isolated areas. Always suspect anyone asking about destinations. But the sanitized version needed hope. The real beast wasn't defeated by heroic woodsmen or clever tricks. It was killed by armed hunters using military tactics. The fairy tale preserved warnings while making them bearable for young minds. Deep in French provincial archives, testimonies remain of a predator so methodical it forced society to question evil's nature. La Bête proved monsters are real, and sometimes fairy tales are the only way we can bear remembering them. Chapter 2. Death Paths Through the Forest. The beast didn't hunt randomly. French investigators discovered every kill site was carefully selected, every victim methodically chosen, every attack strategically planned with military precision. The creature transformed Gavaudan's forests into a hunting preserve where humans were prey. Geographic analysis reveals deliberate patterns suggesting supernatural understanding of human behavior. The beast established 90 square kilometers of territory, focusing on locations, maximizing hunting success while minimizing capture risk. Forest paths connecting isolated farms to villages became corridors of death. The beast identified routes young people used regularly for visiting relatives, delivering goods, attending chores. These weren't random trails, but well-established paths offering minimal escape routes and maximum concealment for ambush. Attack timing revealed disturbing intelligence. The creature hunted during twilight hours when visibility was reduced but not eliminated, allowing observation while remaining hidden. It avoided full daylight when spotted easily and complete darkness when unable to study prey. This suggests understanding that successful hunting required visual assessment before striking. Archaeological evidence from 18th-century cottage sites supports the fairy tale's most chilling aspect, the isolated grandmother's house. Excavations uncovered small dwellings located 2 to 3 kilometers from nearest neighbors, positioned at forest path convergences. These strategic placements served travelers while remaining completely isolated from help. Court records document multiple attacks at these cottages. The pattern was constant. Young person traveling to visit elderly relative, beast tracking along forest path, attack occurring before reaching cottage or immediately after leaving. Investigators found evidence the creature stalked victims for kilometers before choosing optimal strike locations. Victim selection revealed most disturbing intelligence. The beast demonstrated clear preferences, maximizing success while satisfying specific psychological needs. Young females comprised 70% of victims, ages 8 to 20. But it didn't target randomly. It specifically hunted those traveling alone for caretaking duties. Medical examination showed the beast possessed detailed anatomical knowledge. Kills were surgically precise, targeting immediate incapacitation areas while avoiding defensive wounds suggesting prolonged struggle. The creature learned from previous attacks, refining technique for maximum efficiency. The psychological profile is deeply disturbing. The beast hunted to maximize terror and helplessness. Survivors reported it would circle them for minutes before attacking, making noise ensuring they knew they were stalked. This wasn't accidental. The creature derived satisfaction from fear. French military officials noted the beast's territorial control was more sophisticated than warfare experience. It maintained multiple den sites, used natural features as ambush points, established escape routes allowing complete vanishing after attacks. Professional hunters admitted dealing with tactical intelligence beyond their experience. The creature adapted to human countermeasures. When authorities organized patrols, it shifted hunting patterns, avoiding them. When they set traps, it learned identification and circumvention. When they tracked it, it used watercourses and rocky terrain, eliminating scent trails. Each human response met evolution and strategy. Seasonal analysis shows understanding of human behavioral changes. During harvest seasons when people worked in groups, attacks decreased significantly. During winter when individuals made solo trips, checking isolated relatives, attacks spiked dramatically. The creature monitored activity patterns and adjusted hunting accordingly. Perhaps most disturbing, evidence suggests the beast actively trained the human population. By consistently punishing certain behaviors while allowing others to continue safely, It conditioned entire communities to modify behavior patterns suiting its hunting preferences. Lone travel, carrying food through forests, visiting isolated locations became increasingly rare as people learned through terror what the beast tolerated. The fairy tale preserved this geographic horror symbolically. Forest becomes danger rather than natural beauty. The path to grandmother's house represents calculated routes predators use isolating victims. The cottage embodies terrifying reality that safest-looking destinations are actually dangerous traps. French cartographers created detailed maps marking attack sites, escape routes, probable den locations. These maps reveal territorial organization, challenging every assumption about animal behavior, forcing investigators to consider possibilities science wasn't ready to accept. The monster ruled that territory with absolute, terrifying authority for 3 years. Chapter 3: Girls in Blood-Soaked Cloaks. The red cloak wasn't a storytelling device, it was evidence. French court records contain multiple testimonies describing young female victims found wearing distinctive red or scarlet clothing, often hoods or cloaks torn and bloodied during final moments. These weren't coincidental details. They were specific enough that investigators began tracking red garments as a common element in the beast's victim selection. Marie-Jeanne Vallée's encounter on August 11th, 1765, provides the most documented connection to our beloved fairy tale. The 19-year-old was walking through forest near her village, carrying food to her sick grandmother, when the beast emerged from undergrowth. Her testimony, recorded by French investigators, describes a scenario that reads like Little Red Riding Hood brought to horrifying life. According to Marie-Jeanne's statement, the creature approached her almost casually, showing no fear of humans, behavior suggesting it had successfully hunted people before. It began circling her, forcing her to back toward a cluster of trees where she grabbed a spear-like branch. When the beast lunged, she drove the improvised weapon directly into its chest, becoming one of few people to wound the creature and survive. Her description reveals the methodical nature of the beast's hunting strategy. It didn't rush in for quick kill like desperate animal. Instead, it seemed to be studying her, testing her responses, almost as if learning from each encounter to improve technique for future hunts. This calculated approach appeared in attack after attack, suggesting intelligence that made authorities question whether they were dealing with animal at all. Court records document multiple attacks involving young females carrying baskets of food through forest paths to visit elderly relatives. The pattern was consistent. Lone girls between 8 and 20 years old, traveling isolated routes to deliver bread, cheese, or medicine to family members. The beast seemed to understand these girls followed predictable patterns, making them easy prey. What made these attacks particularly significant was the evidence of calculated victim selection. The beast demonstrated clear preferences that maximized hunting success while satisfying what appeared to be specific psychological needs. Young females comprised over 70% of documented victims, but the creature didn't target randomly. It specifically hunted those traveling alone to perform caretaking duties. Medical examinations of attack sites revealed the beast possessed detailed knowledge of human anatomy and vulnerability. Kills were executed with surgical precision, targeting areas causing immediate incapacitation while avoiding defensive wounds that might suggest prolonged struggle. This suggests the creature learned from previous attacks, refining technique with each kill to achieve maximum efficiency. The beast's killing method was surgical. Unlike normal predators targeting throat or abdomen, this creature consistently targeted head and neck with precision. Victims were found decapitated or with crushed skulls, but minimal damage elsewhere. These examinations suggested the beast possessed not just incredible strength, but anatomical knowledge of human vulnerabilities. French authorities noticed patterns in clothing and personal effects found at attack sites. Red or brightly colored garments appeared repeatedly in victim descriptions, suggesting the beast might have been attracted to specific visual cues. This represented level of aesthetic preference that demonstrated near-human intelligence in victim selection processes. Church records from period document community growing awareness of connections between clothing colors and attack patterns. Parents began refusing to let daughters wear anything red or brightly colored. Local cloth merchants reported dramatic drops in sales of red fabric during the beast's terror reign. The color itself became associated with death and predation in collective community consciousness. What makes these historical accounts significant is precise alignment with fairy tale structure we know today. Young girl carrying food, journey to visit elderly relative, predator waiting in forest, isolated cottage as potential danger site rather than safety. Even detail of predator's apparent interest in victim's appearance rather than just vulnerability as prey. The documented attacks preserve essential survival information that later appeared in sanitized fairy tale form. The beast's preference for targeting individuals traveling alone to perform family duties. Its apparent ability to track victims over considerable distances. Its methodical approach to hunting that suggested planning and intelligence rather than random animal behavior. Survivors' testimonies describe how the creature would often observe potential victims before striking, making noise to ensure they knew they were being stalked. This wasn't accidental behavior. The beast appeared to derive satisfaction from generating fear in prey before attacking. This psychological component elevated the creature's behavior beyond normal predation into something approaching sadistic enjoyment. The fairy tale preserved these warnings in symbolic form while removing the most psychologically disturbing elements. The wolf's conversation with Little Red Riding Hood mirrors documented survivor accounts of the beast's apparently intelligent behavior. The questions about destination and family members reflect actual predatory tactics used to assess victim vulnerability and isolation. But the sanitized version eliminated crucial information about how real predators operate. By transforming calculating intelligence into obvious monster behavior, protective narratives made people less able to recognize actual threats. The real beast gained victims' initial trust through seemingly non-threatening approach before revealing lethal nature. The girls who encountered the beast tried to warn us through their deaths and survival accounts. They demonstrated that predators can develop specific preferences and sophisticated hunting strategies. They showed that even familiar forest paths can become corridors of death when systematic predators establish hunting territories. Their stories were transformed into fairy tales not to honor their memory, but to make their warnings psychologically bearable for future generations. The little girls in their bright clothing became symbols rather than individuals. Their specific deaths generalized into universal warnings about stranger danger and forest safety. Chapter 4. Monsters who smiled at their prey. The Beast of Gavaudan wasn't alone. French, German, and English court record from 14th through 18th centuries document hundreds of cases involving human wolves, individuals whose predatory behavior was so systematic and brutal that communities could only understand them through supernatural frameworks. These weren't mythological werewolves, but serial killers whose methods were so advanced that medieval society needed folklore to process what they witnessed. Peter Stump's case in 1621 Germany provides the clearest example. Court records describe Stump as a wealthy farmer who, over 25 years, murdered at least 16 people, including 2 pregnant women and 13 children. His method was distinctive. Stalking victims through forest paths, attacking with surgical precision targeting throat and head, then partially consuming bodies in ritualistic feeding. What made Stump truly terrifying was psychological manipulation. He would approach potential victims as helpful stranger, offering assistance or directions, gaining trust before revealing true nature. He specifically targeted people traveling alone to visit relatives. Understanding these individuals would be missed quickly enough to create fear, but not soon enough to prevent attack. Trial transcripts reveal Stump's methodology in disturbing detail. He had studied human behavior patterns within his territory, learning which paths people used regularly, which times offered best hunting opportunities, which victim types would generate maximum psychological impact. He wasn't killing randomly, but conducting terror campaigns designed to establish dominance over entire regions. French authorities investigating similar cases developed predator profiles based on repeatedly observed behavioral patterns. These medieval serial killers shared specific characteristics: established hunting territories, studied victim behavior patterns, used deception and manipulation to gain prey access, and derived psychological satisfaction from community fear generation. Werewolf trials of 16th and 17th centuries preserve hundreds of testimonies describing individuals whose behavior matched modern psychopathic predator understanding. These weren't supernatural transformations, but human beings whose psychological makeup allowed hunting other humans with systematic predator approaches. Werewolf mythology provided frameworks for medieval communities to understand behavior that wouldn't be scientifically explained until centuries later. Gilles Garnier's case in 1573, France, demonstrates how these predators adapted methods based on successful patterns. Court records show Garnier studied previous werewolf cases, learning from other killers' techniques and mistakes. He specifically targeted children carrying food through forest paths. Understanding these victims followed predictable routes and schedules, making them easy to track and ambush. Evidence shows psychological escalation in these historical cases. These predators didn't maintain consistent behavior patterns, but evolved methods over time, becoming more sophisticated and brutal as they gained experience. Medical crime scene examinations showed increasing ritualistic behavior levels, suggesting killers were developing complex psychological relationships with violence acts. Geographical analysis of werewolf territories reveals disturbing victim selection intelligence. These predators established hunting grounds, maximizing success while minimizing capture risk. They avoided heavy foot traffic or military presence areas, focusing instead on routes used by vulnerable individuals traveling alone. They learned which location types provided optimal concealment and escape routes. Perhaps most disturbing, evidence suggests these medieval predators were aware of each other's activities and learned from each other's methods. Court records document cases where multiple werewolf killers operated in neighboring territories, apparently sharing successful hunting technique information. This suggests communication and coordination levels between predators that challenged medieval criminal behavior understanding. Psychological profiles emerging from these cases are remarkably consistent. These individuals demonstrated superficial charm, allowing victim trust gain, complete empathy lack for prey suffering, and obsessive control and domination focus. They viewed other humans as hunting objects rather than fellow beings deserving moral consideration. The fairy tale framework served crucial functions in processing these psychological realities. By transforming human predators into supernatural wolves, communities could discuss and warn about dangerous behavior patterns without confronting full human evil implications. Stories preserved essential survival information while making it psychologically bearable. Little Red Riding Hood specifically warns about predators using deception and manipulation to access victims. The wolf's friendly conversation with the girl, questions about her destination, apparent interest in her well-being. These details mirror behavioral patterns documented in actual predator cases where killers gained victims' trust before revealing true nature. Medieval communities developed sophisticated warning systems disguised as folklore. These stories taught children to recognize predatory behavior patterns, excessive friendliness from strangers, questions about family members or travel plans, attempts to isolate potential victims from help or witnesses. Supernatural frameworks made lessons memorable while avoiding psychological trauma from direct human evil discussion. The transformation of real serial killers into mythological werewolves also served legal and social functions. Medieval legal systems struggled processing crimes seeming to exceed normal human evil capacity. Supernatural frameworks provided ways to prosecute these cases while maintaining community psychological stability. The human wolves were real. The fairy tales were warning systems. And the little girl in the red hood was trying to teach us how to recognize predators who hide their true nature behind masks of helpfulness and concern. Chapter 5. How They Buried the Screams. By 1767, French authorities faced crisis extending far beyond one creature's terror reign. The beast was dead, but psychological damage to the region was so severe that entire communities remained paralyzed by fear. Children refused leaving homes. Adults couldn't work fields or maintain businesses. South Central France's social fabric was disintegrating, and something had to restore normal life. King Louis XV advisors understood that simply announcing the beast's death wouldn't suffice. The creature had become existential terror symbol, transcending physical reality. People needed narrative allowing trauma processing while rebuilding daily life functioning capacity. The truth about what stalked them for 3 years was too disturbing to leave unprocessed. Church records reveal first narrative transformation attempts. Local priests began incorporating beast attacks into sermon frameworks, emphasizing divine protection and moral lessons. The creature became community sin punishment rather than random predator. Victims became martyrs whose deaths served spiritual purposes. This religious framework provided psychological comfort while avoiding pure evil implications, stalking innocent people. But religious transformation wasn't sufficient for families who lost children trauma. The beast had specifically targeted young people performing family duty and care acts. Parents needed processing the reality that sending children to help relatives resulted in brutal death. Guilt and terror required different narrative frameworks. French court officials consulted scholars and storytellers to develop protective narratives, stories preserving essential safety information while transforming traumatic events into psychologically manageable forms. The goal was maintaining community vigilance about genuine dangers while reducing paralyzing terror, preventing normal social functioning. Transforming the beast into fairy tale wolf required systematic sanitization of most disturbing elements. The creature's intelligence had to be reduced to simple cunning. Its systematic hunting patterns had to become opportunistic encounters. Its apparent psychological satisfaction in causing terror had to be eliminated entirely. The goal was preserving warning while removing implications that evil could be so methodical and sophisticated. Red Hood murders presented particular narrative transformation challenges. Evidence suggested the beast developed specific preferences and hunting patterns targeting certain victim types. This psychological sophistication level was too disturbing to preserve in children's stories. The solution was transforming predators' calculated victim selection into simple wolf-girl encounter. Church and state authorities collaborated, developing standardized protective narrative versions distributable across regions affected by similar predator activities. These stories preserved essential survival information. Don't trust strangers, don't travel alone, be suspicious of excessive friendliness, maintain surroundings awareness. But they removed psychological implications that predators could be so intelligent and systematic. Cottage murders required perhaps most extensive sanitization. The reality that predators would kill grandparents and wait for grandchildren arrival was too psychologically devastating to preserve in popular narratives. The solution was transforming cottage from crime scene into rescue place. Grandmother survives, woodsman arrives in time, and family unit remains intact. Legal records show authorities actively suppressed certain details from public discussion. Witness testimonies describing beasts' apparent intelligence were classified as potentially harmful to public stability. Medical examinations revealing ritualistic behavior evidence were restricted to official investigators. The goal was preserving enough truth to maintain vigilance while removing details that might cause social breakdown. The Brothers Grimm, collecting their version 50 years later, had access to both official court records and local oral traditions that had undergone decades of protective transformation. Their version preserves essential warning structure while eliminating virtually all elements connecting story to actual documented murders. The result is tale functioning as safety guide while protecting readers from psychological trauma. But sanitization created its own problems. By removing human evil reality from narrative, protective stories also removed crucial predator behavior pattern information. Children learned fearing wolves in forest, but not neighbors asking too many travel plan questions. They learned avoiding strangers, but not familiar adults, gradually pushing appropriate behavior boundaries. Modern analysis of medieval protective narratives reveals consistent patterns. Authorities prioritized psychological stability over accurate threat assessment. The goal was maintaining enough fear, ensuring safety precautions, while removing specific information, helping people recognize actual predatory behavior. This resulted in security measures that were psychologically comforting but practically insufficient. Fairy tale transformation also served political purposes. Acknowledging human predators could operate with such sophistication raised uncomfortable questions about social order and authority effectiveness. If individuals could establish hunting territories and stalk victims for years without detection, what did that say about government citizen protection capability? Supernatural wolf framework avoided these political implications. Perhaps most significantly, sanitization eliminated evidence that predators could appear normal, even helpful and charming. Fairy tale wolf is obviously monstrous from beginning, but historical predators gained victims' trust through skilled manipulation. By transforming calculating psychopaths into obvious monsters, protective narratives actually made people more vulnerable to real threats. The cover-up wasn't malicious, but desperate attempt by traumatized communities to preserve essential safety information while maintaining psychological functioning capacity. But in protecting people from human evil's full reality, these protective narratives also eliminated crucial information about how evil actually operates. The little girl in Red Hood died, trying to warn us about predators who hide true nature behind helpfulness and concern masks. The fairy tale preserved her warning, but removed details that would have made it most effective. We learned fearing obvious monsters while remaining vulnerable to ones who smile and offer assistance. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of this cover-up wasn't what they removed from the story. It was what they added. The sanitized version introduced elements that never existed in the brutal reality. The heroic woodsman who arrives just in time, the grandmother who survives unharmed, the happy ending where good triumphs over evil. These additions weren't just comforting lies. They were dangerous deceptions that taught children to expect rescue when none might come. In the real murders in south-central France, no woodsman appeared to save the day. No authority figure intervened to protect the innocent. The victims died alone, terrified, and forgotten until their stories were transformed into entertainment. The fairy tale's false hope created generations of children who believed someone would always come to help them, that evil would always be punished, that the world operated according to moral justice. The truth is far darker. Sometimes the monsters win. Sometimes the innocent die horribly. Sometimes there is no rescue, no justice, no happy ending. The real Little Red Riding Hood understood this brutal reality, and she tried to warn us through her death. But we chose the comforting lie over the life-saving truth. And in doing so, we honored her memory by forgetting everything she died trying to teach us.